Hello, Internet, and welcome to MMOBomb Top 5, the show where we run down our wacky, crazy, and sometimes deadly serious Top 5 lists, and you chime in with your own list in the comments. I'm your host, Magic Man, and on today's show, we break down the Top 5 free-to-play game closures you totally saw coming. Now, we're not talking about games like EverQuest Next here, titles that never saw the light of day in any real public way. We're talking about games people could actually get their hands on in early access, closed betas, or even full-on releases. Titles that you knew from the start probably weren't going to be around all that long. And also, in the interest of more current events, we're going to try and keep this list a bit more current to today. So yeah, APB failed pretty hard in its original release, and you totally saw that coming, but that was like 6 years ago. So that being said, let's get started. Number 5. Infinite Crisis. Infinite Crisis by Turbine sounded like a decent idea on paper. Take classic DC comic characters, let the players duke it out in battles that would never happen between these characters. However, with the free-to-play market being slammed with both MOBA games and comic book-based games in the early part of this decade, Infinite Crisis never really stood out. With generic gameplay and a rapidly dwindling player base, Infinite Crisis became mired in closed beta testing from May of 2013 until open beta finally hit in May of 2014. Even a Steam release in 2015 wasn't really enough to keep the game from closing a few months later, and there were even leaked reports about the game tanking badly from the start, alleging a monthly budget hit of $4 million to develop and a player base of only 1,000 concurrent users. These allegations made it clear what you players already knew. Infinite Crisis was doomed to fail. Number 4. 7 Core. Now, let's get a little more specific here. 7 Core, the second time it closed. Remember 7 Core? If you don't, it was a fairly run-of-the-mill free-to-play MMORPG set in a more sci-fi setting with a focus on mount-based gameplay. And that sounds dirty, but trust me, it really wasn't. Yeah, it may have been rather ordinary, but the setting would have been sure to attract players who longed for something other than high fantasy. Now, saying that, no one probably looked at 7 Core in 2012, 2013 and said, this is doomed to fail. However, fail it did, and in 2013, developer G-Potato closed the game saying, quote, "It has proved to be less attractive to players than anticipated, and thus it's becoming unprofitable for the developer to be continued as a game." But that closure is not why 7 Core makes our list. Fast forward a few years, Webzen has just bought out G-Potato and is launching 7 Core again in multiple regions and languages. And I gotta wonder how that decision looked in the boardroom. I just see a couple people sitting around saying, well, we need something new. Any ideas? How about that game that's done and closed from one of our purchases? Well, have we changed it or updated? Didn't it fail? No, we didn't do any of that. Oh, brilliant! Release it next month. Astoundingly, a game that failed in multiple regions under multiple publishers failed yet again and closed in 2015. And no joke, I promise you this is true. The official post is pretty much just a copy-paste of the original, quote, "we don't have any player interest" post used years ago, with just the dates and specifics of the shutdown process changed to fit the latest closure. Great move, Webzen. Number 3. Scarlet Blade. Now, Scarlet Blade from Area Games admittedly had a very specific demographic it was targeting. Yes, the sci-fi setting was again a change of pace, and the lore tried to explain why everyone had to play a female character with massive sweater puppies, but really I don't think a single person was surprised that this free-to-play MMORPG went the way of the dodo. Admittedly, Scarlet Blade probably lasted longer than many had thought it would, but just after 3 years, the game was gone. While player base was a deciding factor here, I'm sure the team behind the title put more of the blame on a lack of development support, content delivery, and server stability. Now, these issues were never really resolved, and even months before closing, a large patch had to be rolled back because of server issues. Let this be a lesson to you future game developers out there. Apparently, too much bouncing and jiggle physics just isn't good for your servers. Number 2, Dust 514. Let's get more players into EVE. How can we expand our universe a bit? How about a free-to-play game linked into the EVE universe that actually impacts EVE players as well? If the idea had stopped right there and moved in any form of logical development, Dust 514 from CCP may never have made this list. What came after this decision is a list of things you should do if you're looking to totally screw over your game before it's even off the ground. While a deal with Sony got CCP into the console market, a big plus for CCP, who was PC exclusive up to that point, sticking to the PlayStation 3 only for this shooter game was a huge mistake. Not only did Dust 514 totally ignore the existing EVE audience that it already had on PC, but launching in May of 2013 and sticking with the PS3 had to hurt, with the PS4 being launched in November of that same year. Expanding your universe with novel gameplay ideas was a great thing. The execution on that plan is kind of what buried Dust 514 from the beginning. Many players enjoyed the game, but bugs, a questionable free-to-play model that pushed players into playing for a long time to acquire items for free, and locking your player base to the long-in-the-tooth PlayStation 3 all proved to be decisions that killed the game. And decisions players questioned at each and every turn to begin with. Here's to hoping that CCP does fare a bit better with its replacement project. Its new title EVE players are very happy to be see coming to PC. Number 1, Triad Wars. Take a single-player, open-world action game that received pretty favorable reviews and a number of awards, and aim to bring it online in the follow-up. You've got a winner so far, right? I agree. If I told you that we were talking about the popular game Sleeping Dogs, you might even be more pumped. Magic Man, I'm gonna lead my own badass triad into turf wars with other online players in the Sleeping Dog universe. Sign me up, you'd probably say. And yeah, I know you don't probably sound like that, but I gotta give you a different voice than I have, for crying out loud. Anyway, yes, most people would have been all over this. Developed by United Front Games and published by Square Enix, Triad Wars set the stage to be a pretty cool project. However, as videos and previews of the gameplay started to be released, players quickly saw and provided feedback on many issues. In large part, Triad Wars was reduced to a clicker mobile game. Building and upgrading items were all on timers, and the action that players loved in Sleeping Dogs was watered down quite a bit. The largest problem was the game's asynchronous gameplay, a term that still gives me nightmares now whenever I hear it. You weren't attacking or defending turf against other players in real time, you were attacking whatever they had built, and they would see the results of your attack the next time they logged on. A lack of female characters for players at the initial launch also stunned players, and almost everyone saw that Triad Wars was doomed, and boy, was it. The game never even made it out of beta, although access was pretty much available through keys on many sites to anybody who wanted in. Teased in September of 2014, then closed in January of 2016. Damn, does it go south fast sometimes. In the official announcement, the Triad Wars team said, "We've loved seeing how you've played Triad Wars, but we know it wasn't right for many of you." But just like Dust 514, that feedback was given by players every step of the way. So there's our top 5. What about yours? Throw your opinions in the comments below, and if you've got a top 5 list you want us to cover, put that idea in the comments as well. Make sure to stop by MMOBomb.com and check out all the other great articles, videos, giveaways, and more that we've got there for you. This is Magic Man from MMOBomb.com saying stay safe, and we'll see you on the server.